Right, so we are back again with this monstrosity, but like I said in the last video, it's the best setup I've got at the moment to kind of visualize the skill trees. But this is going to be another Vex build, focused more around ordnance damage and trouble, with some cryo damage in there as well. So the main plan for this build is ideally find an ordnance weapon that is like a heavy machine gun type with cryo damage on it for increased crit and just overall increased damage. And hopefully it plans out, but we'll get into the first couple of skills. So first off, we're going 2 points into enchantment, basically just to get some bonus kinetic damage when the action skill's active. Not really needed, feel free to go anywhere with these 2 extra points, but we are going 3 points into hasty fiends, which is going to give us 15% movement speed and 20% damage reduction. Ignore the 3 out of 5, I realised there's only 3 points in there, hence why we went 2 over there. Then moving down to the second slot, we are going overprotective, which is a kill skill. Vex and their minions getting overshield. We're trying to stack quite a lot of overshield on here as well, just because we're running a big heavy weapon. We're going to not have that many opportunities to dodge, get out of the way, not going to have too much movement speed, hence why we also went for the movement speed and damage reduction. So that'll get us up to 20% of overshield, which is great. And we also are going over to the right side and taking Yowl and Bay, which is Vex's minions gain increased maximum health capacity. Vex gains increased gun damage for a duration after commanding trouble. The reason for grabbing this is basically I want to, if we're coming into a boss fight, I'm going to command trouble straight away, get that increased gun damage, get that proc, and I'm assuming the gun damage scales with ordnance as well. Still a gun, but we'll have to see. And the gun damage should hopefully scale with that, and we get ourselves an extra 25% gun damage, which is perfect. Then moving on down to the third row, we are going for Claw and Bang, which is Vex and M minions get increased melee damage. We don't care about the melee damage, but also we get ordnance damage, which is another 30% for melee and 30% for ordnance damage, which is perfect. It's our first bit of stack of that. We also go 1 point into Morning. I had an extra point right at the end, so take it for the kill skills, increased effectiveness, which should help with the overshields. So 6% on top to the 20. So we're getting, I can't really do that math right now, but small amount, not too much, but it's a little extra. And most of our points are getting put into the left side, the bottom left. We'll be going into Blast Rights on Ordnance activation. Vex gains overshield and increased fire rate for a duration. If we're using a big gun, fire rate is perfect. The overshield is even better because that should just stack with the 20% overshield that we do get. So we're getting even more, 25% for an overshield. Can't complain whatsoever, should be quite tanky. And then we go to Blasted Fiends. Vex gains increased ordnance damage, again, which should be another 30% on that, so that's a 60% in total. A percentage of Vex's ordnance damage increases minion damage. Realistically, it's not really needed, but if Trouble's going to pump out some good damage, I'm not going to complain for that whatsoever. So yeah, that should be 10% of all the increases to ordnance damage. So that's, I think that's just, I don't even know how much that actually is. So that'll be 50%, so it'll be actually 30% we'll get increased minion damage, I think. And then we're going 3 points into Corporal. Vex and M minions gain increased maximum overshield capacity and overshield duration, just keeping that overshield uptime quite consistent, keep it quite high as a capacity as well. That should give us 30% duration and 30% capacity. And while Vex has an overshield, her and her minions gain increased damage dealt, so that's another 30% when she has the overshield. So 30% on top of that is going on top of the ordnance activation as well, so anytime you pop it, it should go up to 90% increased ordnance damage, which is great. It's nearly double. Well, yeah, nearly double. Vex gains increased cryo damage and cryo status effect, that shiver. Basically we're going into the cryo just because, one, it's there, it's increased cryo damage, and ideally if I can freeze a lot of targets, this is excluding bosses, I believe it's still going to be the same way, you get increased crit damage on those targets. So I thought, might as well pump it into some cryo. And then we get a little bit of elemental as well out of that. So we're going to take the capstone, Trouble Bubble. So Trouble now gains an overshield whenever he deals damage, while Phase Familiar is active. Trouble gains an elemental aura, dealing ordinance damage over time to nearby enemies. If the elemental aura is cryo, it would be really strong for freezing targets in the area, plus it's dealing ordnance damage over time as well. So again, that should double down and make Trouble quite beefy and quite strong. And then moving on to the middle section, we've got Elemental Essence. Vex gains increased elemental damage and double this effect when an action skill is active. So for this, again, stacking with the cryo should give some more elemental damage. I'm not sure whether the cryo is going to come under the category. It probably should, but I mean, it is an element. So yeah, elemental damage, that's another stack of 20%, I believe, and 40% if the action skill is active. And then we're going Infernal Sum, which I believe is our last 5 points, which is Vex and their minions deal increased crit hit damage to enemies below 66.6% HP, so 2/3. Once we get enemies down to that point, we're looking at a 35% increase to crit damage on top of the ordnance damage and on top of everything else that's stacking up quite heavily here. And we should be quite beefy with the overshield. If you really want to, there's a little bit of leeway with this build. In fact, there's a lot, because it's a theorycraft. But if you want to, you could take the 1 point out of Morning and take it over to Vorpal Fiend and getting more increased crit damage over here. The only reason I didn't is because it's quite small amounts, it's only 3%. We'd get to 15 if we put our 5 points in there. But I don't think we're going to do that. And I don't think I spoke about Violent Outburst for the augment. So it's command skill. Press and hold to command Trouble to explode himself. Excuse me. Deal ordnance damage to all nearby enemies and restoring health to Vex. While Phase Familiar is active, sacrifice 33% of its maximum health capacity instead. So basically, if it's going to do ordnance damage, we're going to proc this, get him to blow up, ideally, and then hopefully that should help boost our gun damage over here with the Yowling Bear as well, having a nice increase to that damage there. The only thing we might lose is if it needs to be active at any point. So for example, I don't even actually think I have a skill that needs Trouble to be active that often. No, I don't think I do. But yeah, so that's going to be the build for this one. We like I said, taking Capstone, Trouble Bubble, and taking Violent Outburst. We're obviously going to be running Trouble for this, and ideally we're looking for a massive LMG type weapon in the ordnance slot. If we can get it cryo, even better, then we should be able to pump out quite a lot of damage. It should be 90% ordnance damage, and then add your crit on top of that, your elemental damage on top of that as well, and then increase of the overshield at like, I think it's going to be 45% overshield, which is quite a high amount. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll probably be doing another one of these in the next, probably in the next day or two. Have a good day.